What? Warning battery generator? Why are you always broken? Hello and welcome to How to Helen, where you learn something different every day. Today you learn that I don't have money to fix my Porsche Cayman. Today we learn that a Porsche Cayman is an endless money pit. Why are you always broken? Today and for the rest of the month, we're gonna throw money at the Porsche Cayman. Alright, today we're gonna find out why this 2009 Porsche Cayman is having battery generator warning issues. I do think it's an alternator issue, but we will do the basic troubleshooting steps. To start the test, I hooked up the battery to a digital voltmeter or DVM. And as you can see, it is only reading 8.92 volts. So that means the battery is really low on voltage. With a jump starter, I was able to jump start the car. But even with the car running right now, you can see that the battery is not charging. So it might really be the alternator that has a problem. With the code reader I have, I was able to confirm that it's not charging the battery. As you can see, the voltage supply is dropping. So it really must be the alternator. Here are the tools that we're gonna need for this job. Some plastic prying tools, a ratchet, a socket extension, and a T30 Torx bit. And on a side note, if you're gonna work on your Porsche a lot, you're gonna need some T30 Torx bit handy all the time. This is the most common Torx bit on this car. So first, take off the netting on top of the engine cover and put it on the side. Now with some prying tools, pry the front top of the engine cover like this. Ah! Do them on both sides of the engine cover. Now take out the main engine cover. There are 5 T30 Torx bit holding on to the engine cover. So, brought the wrong tools. There are 5 T30 Torx bit holding on to the engine cover. So remove all 5 of them so you can access the engine. Now slide the engine cover slightly, going to the back to clear the plastic fitting, then pull it up. And that's the car's engine. There's a tab here that holds the plastic in place, so just use your plastic trim remover to take it out. Now start pulling the carpet downwards and pull towards you. That's how you remove the interior carpet trim for the engine. Alright, this is the first time I'm doing this also, so I still have to figure out what size these are. To remove the engine cabin cover, there are 5 10mm nuts holding onto it, so just remove all of them. Oh, there's 2 more at the bottom. Sorry, I didn't see them. So in addition, you got 2 10mm nuts in the middle. I guess you have to take them out also. And there you go. There's your alternator. Here is the reason I wanted to do this project. On my research, all the Boxster and Cayman's DIYs are before 2009, which means their designation numbers are 986 and 987.1. On those vehicles, the engine orientation is different. Their tensioner is here in the middle, behind these cables, and you use a 24mm socket to release the tension. With the 987.2 Caymans, the tensioner release is here on the passenger side. And tension release uses a 30mm socket to remove it. So what you have to do is turn it clockwise like this, and you can see that it's releasing the belt. But before removing the belt, take a picture or draw on paper the orientation and route of the belt. So in case you forget later how it's routed, you can have a reference for it. So I'll take a picture. Now we're going to release the tension on the belt by turning the socket clockwise. As you can see, it is releasing. So once you release a little tension, just go ahead and there's so much tension. And there you go. Before removing the alternator, spray a little WD-40. Now, based on my research, the alternator is held by two 10mm bolts. But because the bolts look weird to me, I bought myself a 10mm knurled grip just to be safe, because I don't want to ruin the threads on these bolts. Otherwise, we're going to have a bigger problem. Alright, let's slowly try to remove the alternator. Be careful. It's not budging. Oh, this one budged. This one. Uh-oh. Like I said, be freaking careful. Okay, just a quick correction or update. For the nuts on the alternator, it's actually a external Torx socket or a female Torx, which is called an E10 socket. So it should be snug. I didn't want to round the head, that's why I bought this, just to be safe. So I soaked the remaining bolt with WD-40. Here's the hardest part. Now that we have the correct socket, we should be able to remove the bolt. My only concern is because the bolt is too tight, it might break off the head, and when that happens, then we're gonna have more problems. Hallelujah! The head didn't break off, so we're good. Alright, there's one wire here, but I guess I have to disconnect the battery first, so I can unplug the alternator. Before you remove the alternator from the car, disconnect the battery first. Let's start removing the battery. The battery clamps are held by a 10mm socket, so use a 10mm to remove them. Start with the negative first, then the positive. Now we can continue removing the alternator. On the side, there's a connector that holds the wire in place. Just pull it off. Alright, this one, I don't know if you saw it, but that connector is this connector. Sorry, it's dark. Remove this connector plug by pressing on the lever or whatever that is. Careful. Connector plug looks like this. Behind the alternator is a 13mm nut. I think that's the power wire. You have to take it out before you can remove the alternator. So take it out if you can find space to do it. I think that's a power cable or power charger that's covered by this plastic. Okay, then take out the connector to get the alternator out. Go. Alright, the alternator is just stuck where the bolts align. Huh. Come on. It's almost out. Yay! I think. After a long pushing and pulling, it's out. I'm never doing this again. On my research, I found out that I can just change the voltage regulator on the alternator to make it work again. But because when I was removing it, I dinged this part, I guess I'm just gonna order the whole unit. Here is a side-by-side comparison of the old alternator and the new alternator. I also ordered new bolts for the alternator as the old one seems to start to rust. Here on the Bosch alternator warranty card, it states that the battery has to be charged before installing the alternator. Failure to have the battery well charged might void the warranty on the alternator. To comply with the alternator specifications for the battery voltage, I had the battery charged at AutoZone. To confirm that the battery is within specs, here's a digital voltmeter reading 12.3 volts. As a safety precaution, make sure your fire extinguisher is close by. Remember, this is a Porsche. Porsche, Ferrari, and Lamborghinis have a tendency to start a fire by itself, so better safe than sorry. Now let's put the battery back in the car, in the front trunk or front. This will be the biggest challenge and most hard part of the process. We need to slide the alternator back in its place, and because you can see that the opening is very small, we gotta wiggle it and try to not damage it as much as we can. So wish me luck. But before we do that, to prevent the screws from rusting, I stole some of Helen's petroleum jelly and I'm gonna dab it on the screws so moisture doesn't come in and rust it immediately. So Helen, if you're watching, sorry. I know you still love me. Ready to put the alternator in. I haven't even started and I'm already exhausted. Goodness, you need to be a contortionist for this. Alright, sorry I had to put the camera down because it's too hard to do it with one hand. Now I'm just gonna put the nut back in on that power cable. Tie it in with a 13mm socket wrench. Nut is back, and I'm gonna dab it with a petroleum jelly again, just to prevent further corrosion, rusting. Put back the cover, plastic cover. Now put back the other plug that we removed. Make sure it locks in place. You should hear a snap when it locks in place. There you go. Now last one, we had a wire holder that's on the side of the alternator that we removed previously. So just put that back in place. Looks like this. And it should go on the side. It's not back in place. There you hear it, right? Alright. Now that we were able to put all the wires and the wire holders in place in the back of the alternator, let's put back the alternator in its position. Ow! At least it went back in its place now. Yeah. Whew. And as for my preventive measures, I'm gonna put a little more petroleum jelly on the nut, just to avoid it from corroding and rusting in the future. I think that's good enough. I'll slide the bolts on the alternator. Now we're going to compress the tensioner so we can put back the drive belt. And there you go. Okay, everything looks like it's in place. With the engine on position but not starting, the DME supply is 0. But when we start it, it is 14 point plus volts, which means it's charging now. So that was it. It was the alternator. I guess we did fix it, huh? And just to be sure that nothing's broken or nothing's burning up, we're starting a fire. Alright, now inspect the belt. Make sure everything's still intact. Nothing's burning. Nothing's overheating. And when everything's good, just put the car back together. And you should be done. By far, this has been the hardest and most expensive repair that I've done in my life. And if I screwed up, this would have been a catastrophe. Luckily, we were able to troubleshoot and replace the alternator without major incidents. But you know, never in my life would I ever thought that I would own a Porsche, let alone work on one. But with hard work, I was able to save up and finally purchase one. So I am sharing my story, hoping that it would inspire you to try and reach your goals. Because if you work hard enough, you can definitely achieve them. And if you're still watching this, I would like to thank you for supporting our channel, and we try to bring you something different every day. My name is RJeff, and thank you for watching How to Helen. So while I was putting the car back together, I just had a thought. Who do you blame for the alternator failure? Do you blame Porsche or Bosch? The alternator failures on Caymans are common. So common that there's a lot of rebuild ones online. But Porsche is not the one who made the alternator. It's Bosch. Bosch has been making a lot of alternators for different cars for a long time. But why is it that only on Caymans that there's a lot of alternator failures? So that is something to think about. So who do you think is at fault? Let me know down below at the comment section, as I am curious. as who you think is responsible for these failures.